I was born to Joanne Poitras and Wayne Wall in Wainwright, Alberta. Joe's parents were Tilly and Joseph Poitras. Wayne's parents were Marion Tillotson and Lloyd Wall. Joe had named me Brandy Lee Wall. Later, as an adult, I requested my adoption papers, which painted a very different story than the one I was told over the years. Joe had managed to get to Calgary in a women's shelter for the domestically abused. I was 2 years old at the time, and the system used my disability, cerebral palsy, as the excuse to put me in foster care. Meanwhile, fully noting I was mixed native blood. It was 1982, and the 60s scoop was still very much a thing. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or LDS for short, also known as the Mormon Church, thought they were saving Indigenous children by raising them in colonial households and molding them into white children. That's how I ended up in the Golightly's home. Unfortunately, it was the first place I experienced and witnessed lateral violence. I wasn't the only Indigenous child. There were two others, my foster sister, Melody, and my adopted brother, Darcy. Melody is Cree, like my ancestors, and Darcy is Blackfoot. Like any other adopted preteen, I wanted to know where I came from. I craved the connection with people who looked like me. When I looked in the mirror, in my heart of hearts, I knew I was Indigenous. So by that time, I begged my now adopted parents to drive to Saskatchewan so that I could meet my birth family. Man, I was so nervous and excited. I could hardly contain myself. Darcy was doing art and had one of his designs printed on a t-shirt for me. I was so proud of him and so sure of my background. I wanted to show my other family that I was proud of our family. So, on the day that we were going to meet, I put Darcy's shirt firmly on and expected them to be as excited as I was to going to know what nation I was from finally. It didn't happen that way, though. No, no, you are just French and Ukrainian, they said. No Indigenous in me whatsoever. Imagine how crushed I was. I went home deflated. A few years later, I flew to High Level where Joe picked me up and drove 2 hours to Zama City, a little hamlet in the middle of nowhere. I stayed with Joe and my birth sister Rachel for a week, still no mention of any connection to Indigenous culture. So I threw myself into the family I had, the Golightleys, despite recognizing the signs of mistreatment, thanks to health class. Fast forward to when I had kids of my own, I found out that Joe had been diagnosed with breast cancer. At that point, my relationship with Joe was non-existent. However, when she had treatment at the U of A, I would visit. Towards the end, she finally admitted that we were Métis. In the winter of 21, I decided to take the plunge and go to MacEwan's Indigenous Foundations program, Pimachissowin, while I started my upgrading in January 2022. I was so proud when I was gifted with a Q Wassiston hoodie. To this day, it's in my top 3 hoodies. This is when I started to realize that I didn't have to hide myself anymore. I was and am Indigenous, and I can be loud and proud. I started to wear Darcy's t-shirts out in public. In Pimachissowin, I received land-based education from Professor Badger, which made me acknowledge that my disconnection to my land relatives was very real and that I needed to start fixing it. The next September, I got my first Every Child Matters t-shirt and other Indigenous pride shirts. Fun fact, Melody's friend designed them. Our youngest wanted to know how much they should identify as Métis. So after my cousin got her Métis status, my youngest pushed me to get mine, and in turn, both of our children could get theirs. After that, the youngest did a deep dive into our genealogy, and they could pinpoint where exactly our ancestors stopped identifying as Métis and only declared the French side. Until Pimachissowin, I didn't know what smudging is, so when they said we could before the day's lesson, I thought smudging was weird. After doing it in class a few times, I noticed that I was more focused and relaxed. I was so grateful when Key Wassiston gave me my own smudge kit. I smudge daily now. The first real Métis piece of clothing I got was a ribbon shirt. Usually worn by male-presenting people, however, as L identify as non-binary or gender fluid, it appealed to me more than a skirt. That was until we went to a Métis market and I saw one that spoke to me. It had multiple kinds of animals. I have always had an affinity with animals. I wore both to my first powwow to represent all of me. That's when I learned about the Métis Festival. Our youngest went with us the first year we both got Métis sashes. After that, both kids went. They have traditional crafts, such as dyed fish scale art. Even though both kids are adults, they like doing and learning about crafts. I maintain a distant relationship with the Golightlies. I don't hide my culture from them. The three Indigenous children the system tried to erase, but ultimately failed.